We now return to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project, the radio show discussing honest truth about Illinois policy and politics. Here's AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan, back with Pat on this edition of Rising. And Pat, the state of Illinois is throwing more interceptions than Matt Stafford did in Week 1 against the Jets. Chicago, the latest municipality to face a diversion of state money as a result of the pension intercept law.
Love this law, Dan. This is a fascinating law.
Took effect in 2018. This is what led the city of Harvey to lay off half their police force, North Chicago having to do the same. Under this law, municipalities that fail to make full contributions to their police or fire pension funds can see state money meant for the local unit of government diverted, intercepted, if you will, directly to by the pension funds to be used to fund the pension obligations that are accruing at the local level. So the reason Chicago could be the latest municipality to face this diversion of state money is the same reason that Tiny Dancer is trying to borrow $10 billion on his way out the door, is because the police and fire pensions in Chicago are circling the drain.
So two things. First off, Matthew Stafford, Georgia Bulldog. My daughter Anna, Georgia Bulldog. Second thing is think about this law, Dan. Okay, I got to get my plug in for.
Yeah.
Think about this law.
I would have gone with Herschel Walker as the
Well,
comparison rather than Matthew Stafford.
You mentioned Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have gone with Fran Tarkenton or Herschel Walker or Todd Gurley. Think of a concept where current tax dollars that people are paying into the state are being diverted from services just to pay these pensions, right? This is the problem we've been talking about ad nauseum and forever, and this is a perfect example of how it actually impacts it. You pay your taxes expecting that there's going to be public parks, schools, police, fire, all the things you just mentioned, and instead it's just going to cover pension costs because they haven't been managed properly. They've been promised too much, and this is a state law that we came up with because the pensioners control our government. The public sector unions control our government.
For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Bill Bergman, who is the Director of Research for Truth in Accounting, truthinaccounting.org, that tracks things like this, the accounting of government at every level, and I'm glad somebody's doing. Certainly the people in office aren't. Bill, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, good morning, Dan.
Good morning, and I should have mentioned, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm on the board of Truth in Accounting. So the pension shortfalls and the interceptions that are occurring, the short-term implications with police and fire pension funds in in Chicago, that both of which are less than 25% funded.
Well, they're starting to grab for the lifeboats. That's in failing situations, you tend to see more increasingly aggressive efforts to carve out senior positions and ways in which you can make sure that you're going to get paid on your bills, and what this pension intercept development indicates is that they're starting to try to get the first lifeboats, perhaps on the Titanic. It's an ominous development. Normally, when if you Google Chicago and intercept, you expect to see things like maybe articles about Bob Avellini or Cade McNown. But
if you Google DUI, you'll get articles about Bob Avellini.
Bob Avellini, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Vince Evans, Bob Avellini, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Well, that's maybe dating myself, but the main
Neil
point is that
Armstrong
in fact you're getting it's a scary development, and the city needs to wake up, and the state of Illinois. The dollar amounts that we're talking about here, the Chicago firefighter plan is roughly 20% funded based on their own accounting methods. That means that they've got, and in fact, it's when we think about the fact that they're definitely underfunded, it's easy to overlook the fact that they actually have a lot of money. They have $1 billion roughly in invested assets, but that's only 1/5 of the amount required for the present value of all the promises that have been made to these folks that have, that are out there doing work for us that's valuable. But the city and the state in general have done a very irresponsible job of funding those plans.
So, Bill, just give us an understanding, because we've looked at the police pension fund in Chicago, and based on their own filings to the Department of Insurance, it looks like they run out of money by the end of 2021. When you have a fire pension fund, like you just mentioned, that's 20% funded in terms of the obligations that have accrued, according to their own accounting. What does that mean? I mean, what's the medium-term viability of that fund? Explain that to people.
Well, it's not going to run out of money tomorrow. However, in the medium term, I'm saying 5-10 years or so from now, the reason why these intercepts are happening is that they want to make sure that these run-out dates, which under one method, this 20% it depends on a discount rate that is used to discount future liabilities. And in fact, in recent years, Chicago has used a blended discount rate. This gets kind of technical, but it's an important thing to note that we believe, and others do too, that they use investment rate of return assumptions for the discount rate, which is perhaps one thing that makes the situation look even better than it really is. However, the new accounting standards have also begun to require these folks to start using blended discount rates if they have a run-out date when there are no longer any assets to pay for the pensions. And under current accounting, the run-out date for the Chicago Fire Plan is 2070, which is, that's out there. So in the near term, we're not going to have a problem paying pensions, but there's a fight over the possible implication that, in fact, they are going to run out of money, and that's what we're seeing today.
So Bill, if it's 1/5 funded, what would the rate of return have to be for this to be sustainable? The answer is there is no rate of return. You'd have to put it on a craps table in Vegas and hope for the best. And in fact, they have very risky investment portfolios, and in part because
they need to get a higher rate of return.
That's what they're seeking this stuff, and you and I are effectively, even if we're not in the stock market, we're effectively in the stock market because we get the downside, and it's that's another, under this pension intercept law is under there's a fiduciary duty theoretically for the pension trustees to demand the intercept under current law, and I'm going to recommend a really cool law review article that came out over the weekend from a professor at Ohio State, making a radical recommendation that fiduciary duties for pension plans be transformed and not directed towards the pension plan beneficiaries, but to the public and to the taxpayers. That's their first duty for these pension plans. Take a look at it. Paul Rose wrote it, and it's in the Illinois Law Review.
I hope you didn't let your subscription run out, Pat.
Yeah, no, I'll get that for you, Dan. I follow all the law reviews as a lawyer. So is what's laid out in that article the solution? And if you could tell the listeners, obviously this isn't the solution. What kind of things should we be looking at as policy advocates that could potentially before 2070 help this situation be better than what's currently planned?
Well, I think one policy option that is being discussed, Truth in Accounting doesn't have an official position on this, but there are growing efforts to secure the possibility of extraordinary insolvency resolution for the city, for its pension plans, and even potentially for the state of Illinois under a different legal framework. And that's the efforts to allow for bankruptcy resolutions in conditions like this. And that's something to take a look at. James Beato at Chapman and Cutler is someone who's helped develop a proposed law that would move in that direction.
And just talk again about these kind of the implications of things that are being proposed. Like I mentioned, Tiny Dancer wanting to borrow $10 billion to stave off the death spiral of the Chicago police and fire pension funds. What that means, the borrowing, particularly at otherwise usurious rates in this environment because Illinois' bond rating is so bad, those are just backdoor tax increases, but I think people don't read it like that the way it's reported.
It sounds like those pension obligation bonds can be a way to, quote, fix the pension plans, and it certainly does help the pension plans. They're much more unambiguously secured for the future for the pensioners. However, you and I as taxpayers are on the downside. The city's balance sheet gets bigger, and the risk for the possibility of a downturn in investment returns is on our shoulders, and the fund has the assets.
Yeah, I think that's one of the scary things about all this, Bill, is that what happens, like the stock market under the Trump administration has just been like historically on fire. And what happens when that all comes to an end, which inevitably it will, right? And you'll have lulls and you'll have economic downturns. And, these folks are anticipating returns in the current environment that they're not getting. What's going to happen when that all comes tumbling down a little bit and there's no way to get those returns?
Well, under current law, and again, this is a matter of current interest for efforts to secure bankruptcy possibilities, but under current law, with the benefits guaranteed to the recipients under the Illinois Supreme Court rulings, the downside is, of any downturn in the equity markets is borne by taxpayers, because if the money isn't there in the investments, the dollars for contributions have to come from taxes, and so effectively the risk is on our shoulders as taxpayers on the downside.
Bill Bergman, Director of Research for Truth in Accounting, truthinaccounting.org. Bill, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great. Have a good day.
You too.